All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the MediaJel podcast, where we cover the latest marketing trends and strategies that are most effective in growing your cannabis dispensary, delivery service, or brand. MediaJel, we connect cannabis brands and retailers with cannabis consumers through our ad network of mainstream publishers, mobile apps, games, and TV. We help cannabis companies advertise on Google, support an SEO, and activate data with display advertising to support e-commerce sales. I'm your host, Guillermo Bravo, and today we'll be discussing cannabis MSO marketing, scaling a multi-location dispensary marketing strategy. I'm really excited to introduce Mike Bibbey. Mike is the former VP of marketing at Ethos Cannabis. He's currently open to new opportunities, and he brings 15 plus years of digital marketing and demand generation experience to today's podcast. Welcome to the podcast, Mike.
Hey, thanks for having me. Excited to be here.
Nice to see you. How's everything?
Everything's going good. I really enjoy your podcast. I feel like I've learned something from every one of them. So I'm excited that you included me. This is gonna be fun.
I'm really excited to have you on. You have a breadth of knowledge and really excited to share it with our audience. So let's start from the top. Tell us a little bit about yourself and your background.
Yeah, I'm a primarily consumer marketer. Been able to work across several different product categories, ranging from home furnishings, where I got my start, to chocolate and gourmet food gifts. Spent several years in licensed sports products, and then the last 2 years in cannabis. So it's been a fun journey. My deep experience in digital and e-commerce. That's kind of where I cut my teeth, but also have some B2B projects in there, as well as some branding and brand development. So yeah, that's my quick background.
Nice. Yeah, you have a breadth of experience, and I really enjoyed working with you on the Ethos campaign for a couple of years. Did you always want to be a VP of sales?
Or
VP of marketing and be in the marketing space?
Yeah, you know what? Not specifically. I kind of just trended there. I was, I'm a problem solver. So I kind of got into marketing. I was one of the first, going way back, kind of migration from digital into marketing leadership. And we're starting to see that come around more and more these days. But, I did it, 15 plus years ago, where I was working in website development and e-commerce and building sites and so forth. And, finally got the opportunity to really actually lead a business and realize that the biggest challenge was, finding customers and making connections with customers, and just really found a nice connection there, and something that I really leaned into. It's kind of interesting. I went back and got my my MBA at one point, and it felt like I needed a major in marketing to have that kind of that Kellogg marketing stamp on my resume. But when I was taking classes, I actually took the minimum number of marketing classes that I needed to get that major, and took a lot of finance, entrepreneurship, operations classes. So I felt like I needed that background to be able to really succeed and communicate with the manufacturing and supply chain teams, the finance team, most importantly, understand how they were looking at the business, how investors look at the business. So really, I kind of think of myself as a business leader, but have really, been drawn to, making connections with consumers and the marketing function in particular.
Yeah, and it's that experience with Kellogg's and getting your master's. Like, how much of that do you use in your day to days in your marketing roles now?
A lot of it. A lot of it. The what I've found is in moving into cannabis is the kind of the core functions, strategies, marketing in general is the same. It's the same across product categories. Obviously, cannabis has its own challenges with regulations and business issues and so forth. But a lot of the core stuff is there. It's been kind of exciting and challenging to figure out how do we overcome some of those roadblocks? How do we work around, get over them? Where do we need to just be patient and wait for things to mature? So yeah, there's a lot of cannabis is different. It's unique in a business compared to any other e-commerce or retail business that I've worked in. But a lot of the foundational stuff is the same and can be used across industries.
And what drew you to the cannabis space in the first place? Like, why did you join?
Yeah, I was recruited in. I had a friend of mine who had started one of the big MSOs, 6-7 years ago. He left there and was working on his second company, and called me up and said, "Hey, start a new company. I need some marketing help. Do you want to talk? And I wasn't necessarily interested at the time, but said, you know what, I really respect him. Let me hear what he's got to. Maybe I know somebody I can refer in. But once he started talking to me about how, what he had learned in his previous experience, and how he was looking at the cannabis market and how he wanted to build this company, I was really drawn in. We talked through, there's kind of two ends of the spectrum on cannabis businesses. There's the traditional kind of growers, cultivators, the cannabis enthusiasts that are, they're very passionate about the product, they're passionate about legalization, advocacy, they're excited to be in the business, but may not be really sophisticated business operators. And so there's some challenges there. On the other end of the spectrum, there's the finance people who are seeing the dollar signs. They're trying to make money quickly, right? They want to gather up as many licenses as they can, big footprint, build something they can flip and make a bunch of money. And what we talked through is this company was going to do something in the middle. We're going to build a sustainable, profitable company. We're going to bring in people with expertise from outside the cannabis industry and pair them with the cannabis experts that we have, and build something that can be profitable, sustainable over time. And if we can do that and grow strategically, then we'll have all kinds of exit opportunities. We're not going to be reliant on some of the financial exits and so forth, but we should have plenty of opportunities. And you combine that with what this company was doing with real medical research, partnered with a research institution in Philadelphia. We're actually, working with doctors and doing research to support, put data and real numbers behind some of the effects of cannabis that are kind of support the art and the lore around cannabis historically. So kind of the combination of those two, the research aspect plus the kind of building a sustainable company, really resonated with me. And I said, let's do this. I guess the third piece there is it was startup, and I kind of enjoy building things. Let's figure out how we can get this from zero to $100 million as quickly as we can. So I'm glad I took the leap. It's been a fun ride the last couple of years. We've done some good stuff.
Yeah. I've watched the evolution of you and the company, and it's really been a joy to work with you and just really be innovative with all our marketing strategies. And I'm really excited to share everything that we've worked with and worked through over the past few years. So it's going to be an incredible session today. You wear many hats. Let's just say that. That's an understatement.
A lot to do when you're starting up a company, right? There's all kinds of things need to take place. And,
Exactly. And I know that, at Ethos, we went through successful mergers and acquisitions, and it's a mountain of work on its own. And we've covered M&As in the previous webinar. So let's set the stage. What are the steps that business should take, once an acquisition is complete? How do you fold a new location into your brand, both on the ground and online? I know Ethos, Ethos did a lot of acquisitions and rebrands, so this is going to be a great lesson for our audience.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the first lesson is come up with a plan and don't do it all at once. Go in steps, right? If you're acquiring a new dispensary that's got an existing customer base, for example, there's going to be some questions. There's people might be scared. There's some anxiety. What's changing, and there's it's just unsettling for customers, employees, lots of people involved. So what I found is the most important point is to let people know there's a change and reinforce the good stuff that's going to continue. Maybe you have the same people are going to be there. People like to know that, hey, the budtender they have relationship is still going to be there. So if you got good people, make sure the same people are there. Tell your customers that, maybe you got the same products, same prices, same promotions, the stuff that's real core. If that stuff isn't changing, reinforce that. Tell your customers, hey, new name, same great service, same product, same prices, that type of thing. There will be stages. You want to, take over a business. You don't want to change everything, change the sign on the door and all the brand immediately, but kind of work it in over time and build a plan around that, because it doesn't happen overnight. There's construction, there's setup and integration of systems and so forth. It's the stuff that takes a lot of time. But once you can reassure people that the good stuff is still there. Then you start to layer in your own brand message and what are the new things that are coming. Maybe you got better buying power and you got better pricing. That's a great selling point. Someone got better pricing, right? Maybe you've got this research component, you got some educational component that you can layer in. That's nice and good for customers to know. Maybe you're changing the hours. There's situations where we've come in and we're able to add another day of the week or add a couple hours in a day, and that's good information for customers to have and to help kind of build that relationship. So kind of reinforcing what's the same, starting to layer in your additional value points and get people comfortable with your brand. Those are really the important pieces that I see from a marketing and messaging standpoint. Obviously, there's a lot of details under there that we can get into if you'd like to, in terms of systems integration and messaging integration and website integration and all that type of stuff.
Well, let's talk about the website. What's the best way to absorb another retailer's website, SEO rankings, et cetera, and capitalize on the rankings and really transfer over that domain authority?
Yeah, that's super important piece that a lot of people in the M&A part of the business don't understand is the value of that digital experience and how important that is in cannabis in particular. And what happens if your website goes away or your SEO ranking goes away? That's critically important stuff. So, unfortunately, I've been able to have partners like yourself that we lean on to help us kind of work through that and understand. Okay, we're going to need to negotiate into the deal, 301 redirects on the website, so that website juice that's there, the SEO juice, transfers over to your new domain. If you're acquiring domain, you've got a little bit more flexibility. If you're carving it out, if somebody else has been through both of those, and they're kind of independent challenges there. But critically important, and again, to do it in steps. Last thing you want to do is just make a cut, and the website that people were used to going to or how they're finding is no longer there, and they're in the lurch. So, finding a way to do redirects. Again, communicating, hey, same service, different name, kind of that communication point that goes through there. But you want those. You want to make sure you negotiate those redirects for a certain period of time. 90 days at the minimum. If you can get 6 months, even better. The longer time period that you can to keep that juice flowing. Eventually, the traffic will move to your site, and you do away with those. But last thing you want to do is take those off the plate too early, and you don't get that traffic back.
Yeah, just really have a transition plan in place, whether it's 90 days or 6 months. And, on the old side, maybe have a notification, this company is now Ethos, and have that message on there for a little time. And then as the transition kind of takes place, then you can add some of the redirects. You don't have to do the whole website. And then once you really want to sunset the old brand, then you can do that full redirect of the whole domain, and really you've given enough time, and you've notified people through email, through SMS, through your advertising that, hey, this company is now Ethos. So it's all part of that. It's part of that rebranding strategy.
We had one takeover where we were carving dispensaries out of another MSO, so we weren't able to take over the domain. We were able to negotiate location-based links. So they left the locations in their location navigation for a while. And once a customer clicked on that, it came to us instead of their site. That's where the messaging is critically important. Hey, I was on one site and now I'm on another. What happened? But what was nice in that instance is we were able to negotiate the redirect of those links in the navigation, and then the 301 redirects on the actual dispensary pages for an extended period of time. So at some point, the links in the navigation dropped down, but there were still pages that were indexed in Google that were on the older domain that we were able to get redirected for another 6 months. So that was very helpful to kind of keep the flow, make sure that the people were getting to the right place when they were searching for a dispensary near me, for example.
Yeah, I can't emphasize it anymore. Is like SEO really is the number one marketing channel that you should be using as a cannabis retailer by a long shot. So you really want to take that serious especially when you're acquiring digital assets. Like a lot of people, they don't know the value of SEO and really dominating for that city or region. Yep. So really take that into consideration when you're negotiating some of these deals on the M&A side, and when you're rebranding and really trying to move forward. Yep. On the rebranding side, if you're rebranding a dispensary that's been in operation for some time, like what things should you consider before implementing the new strategy?
Again, having a plan on the timing, go in stages. Initial signage, communicating the change, have a plan for when we're going to actually change the logo on the door, for example. All of the, we did a good job with kind of some intermediate signage and pamphlets, handouts that would give to customers so they would be able to make the connection, remember our name, the new name there. But then, once you build that plan and you actually kind of define the date, here's when we're going to actually change over, you want to plan an event, make it a celebration, name change event, new name, same service, new name. But use all your kind of event marketing toolkits. Some areas you can have the food truck and the music playing in the parking lot. You can have your vendors for their pop-ups over, but make it a celebration so people can come and have fun. They can buy their product, but they can also interact with product vendors and suppliers and so forth. So really it's a grand reopening, if you will. You've got a reason to get people excited to come in and see the new stuff. So that's a great way to really celebrate and to draw customers in. We change that brand.
Yeah, it's a huge milestone. You want to make sure that you really engage the local community, right? Because most of these stores, whether you're in a metropolitan area or a rural area, you really need to engage with your community and make sure that you're sharing that message and really just enforcing that you're new, but still some of the same. But we're going to have this much more resources or products available. As you said, the price points will be more favorable for patients. So there's a lot of advantages on that front. And you have to remember that dispensaries really behave. They're like digital e-commerce businesses. A majority of the orders are placed online through their phone. So that's what customers expect, and really using an event to launch that and educate customers and hey, this is the new brand, this is the new experience, and make sure that they're comfortable with it and really train them. And whether it's the first 3 months, 6 months, retailers that are sophisticated, it's a different experience than someone that doesn't know what they're doing in retail. Right?
It's people come to me and say, hey, you've been in cannabis, how's it different than everything else you've done? How's it different from other retail? And in addition to the regulatory kind of hurdles that we talked about earlier, the way I tell people is it behaves very much like a digital business, e-commerce business. Yeah. So very high percentage. We had over 85% of orders being placed online before a customer gets to a dispensary. So it behaves just very, very digital in nature. But what's so different than any other e-commerce business, even other retail, people doing in retail doing buy online, pick up in store, that's a popular channel. But in cannabis, and I'll leave delivery service on the side because they're small at this point. So leaving that aside, 100% of those transactions actually have to come to the store. They have to talk to somebody, have to pick up their product, have to pay, use cash in a lot of instances. So you got this unique combination of the blend of the digital and in-store experience that really need to be in sync much more than any other e-commerce or retail business that I've worked with in the past. And so it's exciting that way. It's different, but they got to be in sync. People are going to ask questions about what they saw online, or they saw it in your digital marketing, your emails or your text and so forth. They're going to come to the store and they're going to ask. So your in-store people need to be in sync with what that messaging is, to be able to support that and enhance it. So it's different. There's people I've met in cannabis that think really just they're so focused on the brick and mortar, the store retail, and don't have that digital component. It's an opportunity missed if you're not really fully engaged on the digital side.
100%. I mean, when I was first starting out in Washington State, some of the top partners that we had, like Have a Heart, they had, I think it was 95% of all their orders were online. And the way that they set their store up initially was different when we were actually working with them. Like they wanted to make sure that people can get in and out as fast as possible. And if they needed to make changes to the order, that was fine. But they had the pickup line, which is 75% of the store, and they were just having people in and out. And they were doing upwards of 1.5 million in online revenue a month. So it works.
it definitely does. And I mean, that's a challenge. If you've got, that high percentage of your customers that are in and out, you need to set up your retail experience so you can service those people. You want to give them the in and out that they want
Yeah.
So how can you find ways to, uh, interrupt them in a positive manner? You don't want to roadblock that by any means, but whether you're featuring new products or new sales or some other conversation points, how can you interrupt that customer and get them to pause a minute? Maybe they're adding on to the order, maybe they're upsizing their orders and changing some things there. But you've got that in and out customer you got to service, but can you continue to build a relationship with those people more than just that initial transaction? At the same time, you'll have some people who want to shop, they want to discover. It's challenging. Product discovery is challenging in store these days in cannabis, but I think it's going to change over time as brands become more prevalent and differentiated products become more prevalent. But
yeah, it's really, really unique. It's like cannabis, you search for a dispensary or delivery service, then you search for a product on the stores. Whereas in like traditional markets, you look for the brand and then you can order that either directly from there, or you'll find a shopping cart or a local store. So it's going to reverse in that sense. We do have a question from the audience. Jeremy Johnson asks, if you're acquiring a new location that has a different point of sale system or e-commerce platform, what are some of the best practices to keep in mind when merging them into the platform you're using?
Wow, best practices are tough though. It's a tough situation. Unfortunately, it's a common situation. There's and then we could go into the specialized POS systems that are cannabis specific and the challenges with that as well. Ideally, as an MSO, as think of an enterprise, you want to have everybody on the same platforms. And unfortunately, sometimes you can, sometimes you can't do that. So you have to deal with what you've got. The more that you can standardize, the better. One of the things that we were able to do is basically build a data warehouse where we were extracting that information from the different POSs and the e-commerce systems, blending in Google Analytics data, for example. And so having a kind of a marketing data warehouse where we can analyze stuff across all of those systems, but we had to abstract it. Otherwise, you were running reports in multiple systems and trying to export and consolidate data. So that was kind of a key piece for us, is to be able to build that system that could take the data exports from those various platforms and pull them into something where we could use and we can understand customer behavior and retention and so forth, and kind of build marketing off of that. So yeah, the best practice is you want to be on you want to consolidate as much as you can. There's instances where you have state regulations that are specifying which systems you can use, and that's not a path that you can follow. So you got to find the right workarounds, and another one of those cannabis challenges, if you will.
Oh yeah. There's a lot of unique challenges. I mean, there's e-commerce companies that are only built for cannabis. Same thing with point of sale systems. So the technology stack can be quite challenging, especially when you're across 3+ states. But I'm really interested in the data warehouse that you built. Like how long did that take to build, and like how crucial was that in the kind of expansion and growth of the business?
It took a long time. Well, I don't remember. 6 months at the minimum, I think. We're looking at, and part of the problem is just your scope. You got to really define that scope. And we got a situation where you get too much going on, and trying to do too much, and nothing gets done for a long time. So we have to refine. It's like, okay, here's the steps, and here's what needs to come first, and what are the mission critical pieces. So it can take a long time. You want to get a good data partner that understands. We were on a Microsoft Azure data platform. I've worked in other companies where it's been open source tools, but somebody who knows the concept. Okay, we need a data lake, ability to query that data, analyze that data, and then we need a display reporting front end to put on top of that on the front. So Microsoft Power BI, MicroStrategy, Tableau, those are the types of tools that are the top layer, but you don't want to start there. You want to make sure you got to get your data and your events and your attributes in place. So it's very important to have find a good data warehouse partner that has solved kind of those solutions in those problems in other industries, and can apply that to what you've got. But once you get that, then you can look at your metrics the same way across individual locations, regions, states, and so forth. It helps you really understand, okay, here's some things that are working good here. How can we take those and amplify them into other markets? Or you have to understand in retail is so location based that things that work in one area may not work in another. And we've seen that across all kinds of different channels and activities. So it's part of the marketing, puzzle is, okay, which are the pieces that are going to work, and how do we put those in? Let's test and see what works and what doesn't work. And if it's not working, let's not spin our wheels or invest in that. Spend a little bit of time to figure out if there's things that we can tweak and improve. But maybe we go a different direction. We go, maybe we need more Google ads in certain locations. Maybe we need less Google ads in certain locations. Maybe we need to lean into programmatic more in various locations. So there's differences there. But once you have this framework where you can see it all together, it helps you, compare and make sure that you're comfortable that you got apples to apples comparison across locations and regions.
Yeah, and just be sure that you're out there A/B testing all the time, whether it's marketing tactics or locations. Like you said, the marketing mix changes depending on, and there's a lot of factors that come into play on that front. I mean, whether it's metropolitan, rural, just depends on the state, depends on parking spots, driving traffic, proximity to highways. Like there's all these factors that come into play, right?
Yeah. Yep. part of the challenge, part of the fun.
It keeps it exciting. Can you tell us a little bit more about a new store, and how will that inform your overall marketing strategy in terms of what percentage of your marketing budget is going to that new location?
Yeah, new stores are always interesting. You don't know what to expect. They behave differently. It's so location specific. Things you mentioned, do you have good parking? Do you good parking access? Do you have access for major thoroughfares? Or are you in an urban area where it's primarily walking traffic? How is that going to be different? And so once you get large organization, you can kind of take those learnings and place those into your expectations. You may have another location that's in a maybe not a rural environment, but a less congested area, less competition, more people traveling, and you've got different opportunities there. You can have a much broader radius to do your geo-targeting, for example. In an urban environment, it's very small. You may have more competition, but just in an urban environment, your ability, people are not going to drive 10 miles, 20 miles to get to your location. In a rural area, they may be passing by, or it's a destination. They have to, because that's the location there. So each one, you got to think about different. What are the factors there? Again, you got to try everything. Make sure you get your full kind of playbook, all of your marketing channels, everything that's working other places, and let's try them all in this location. We don't know for sure which is going to work, which is not going to work out of the gate. I like to heavy up the marketing budget. You can look at your performance at other locations. Okay, here's over time as it gets to scale, our spend is going to be X% of revenue, for example, or maybe in your business, it may be, X $1,000 per month per dispensary and so forth. In a startup, you want to kind of lean into that a little bit. You want to make sure that you've got awareness out of the gate. You're going to be spending more. You want to make sure that you get people to know. It takes a little while to build that organic traffic, to build that SEO, to build the recognizability. So if you can lean into that with some additional digital, you guys were great with us trying to kind of build a funnel ahead of time, getting out ahead months before we were open, starting to do the SEO work, starting to do even some initial paid advertising to start to build a list that we can then market to as soon as that store opens. So getting ahead, staying ahead, start to build that plan, level up, lean into it a little bit as you get started. You can back down if you need to, or if it's successful and your revenue goes up, you continue to build that. But your first few weeks for sure, maybe in a couple of months, your spend to revenue ratio should be higher in that new store than it is with an existing store.
No, exactly. And like, how much time do you usually give before you'll make changes to that marketing campaign? Like, should you make a month, 3 months, 6 months? Like, how long do you give?
That's where you got to be in sync with your CFO, right?
Yeah.
You got to know, okay, here's what we're expecting, and we're expecting to spend more. So we just need to be in sync that our ratios, our metrics are going to be different for a certain period of time. And some CFOs are going to be patient on that. They're going to say, yeah, that makes sense. Let's give this 6 months to ramp up, and then we'll really start to drill in. Other times it's a couple of weeks, and I think you're not going well, and people start to panic and so forth. I'm a firm believer that you got to plant the seeds and let them grow. Very rarely you may run into. We saw a couple instances where it just popped, right? We just had a good location. There was no competition. People were starved. We got the message out right, and it jumped, and it was great from the get-go. That's unusual. That didn't happen very often. More often than not, there was some slow growth that needed time to build. So you need to work with your leadership and kind of set those expectations. And we're going to be patient. We're going to be patient for a month or 2 months, and then at that point, if things aren't working, then we'll figure out what we need to change. How can we do things differently in that location?
Yeah, and then pre-launch is key, and this is something that a lot of retailers aren't doing. Is like you can market for a quarter before the store opens and have a list of 2,000 plus customers that are ready to shop at your store, and there's nothing better than having that list ready to go for grand opening, and really just knocking out of the park and setting your brand presence in that location, in that city. And investors, the owners, the execs, everyone's going to be happy when there's a line around the store.
Exactly.
This is like really setting the pace for that location.
Yeah, the challenge there you got to deal with is scheduling those openings is tough. I mean, it's tough in retail and in construction in general, but then when you layer in the inspections that you have to have for different governmental groups in cannabis, it very rarely happens on time. So just keep that in mind. I'd love to say, okay, we're going to start now, and it's going to give us 8 weeks lead time or 12 weeks lead time before the open. Oftentimes it stretches out. So particularly if you're going to go out and spend money initially, again, that's a conversation you need to have with your CFO. We're spending based on this schedule. If that slips, we're going to keep in touch and figure out, okay, do we need to back off? Is it slipped farther than we want to spend, or are we okay with a couple week delay? We're going to go ahead and continue to advertise up until that point. So again, good communications. You'd love to have it, and when everything works well, you got a good list and you hit the ground running. That's the way to do it. Unfortunately, it just business challenges. It very rarely happens on schedule.
Yeah, and you made some great points about the difference between urban locations versus rural, and just thinking about a rural location, the radius that you'd want to target could be 20, 30 miles, depending on, how far it is from any major city. So the marketing messaging may be different too. It's like drive in to pick up your order or come visit us, where, if you're in an urban location, maybe the proximity is only 1 mile to 3 miles, and we'll be targeting, different public transportation, whether it's subways in Boston, or buses, or what else, like tourist attractions, landmarks, all those different things that are maybe around an urban location. Like you have to take all those into consideration when you're launching these new stores, and like it's a completely different marketing strategy. And one is wide reach. I know that we targeted freeways for some of the rural locations, like high traffic freeways. Those did really well for us.
Yep.
I recall.
Yeah, we had one in Massachusetts where it was a rural location, high traffic, thoroughfare went right by there. And the challenge that we found is that thoroughfare didn't allow billboard advertising. So I would love it. It would have been a perfect spot to put up a huge billboard, exit here, cannabis dispensary. And unfortunately, we just weren't able to do that. So did some digital geotargeting, people who are driving by. Let's see if we can find them online in a programmatic space and so forth.
Yeah, I mean, what's from all the campaigns that you ran, like what should be that digital marketing mix, and like what does that look like?
The way I think about it is you want a pie chart that has lots of pieces to the pie. On a weekly, monthly basis, look at, okay, what are the sources of revenue? What are the sources of traffic? And it's frustrating when you see like half of that is coming from one channel. I mean, you're at risk that way. And that will happen a lot, actually. If you look at the source domain, for example, it's not uncommon to find that Google drives half of your online traffic. Could be more than half of that traffic. But if you get your analytics in place, you can actually break that down and tell the difference between SEO, organic search, from paid search, from business listings. At some point we'll be able to do product listings on Google, but there's several other components you need to manage that individually. So you got lots of Google components. You've got your directories, the cannabis directories, weed maps, Leafly, go into the smaller ones. We had actually real good success with things like Pot Guide outperforming Leafly in a lot of cases. Where's Weed? There's a bunch of those. So they're so inexpensive. You got to try and test them all and put your analytics in place so the performance there. Both email and SMS critically important. Huge challenges in SMS in cannabis. The cell phone carriers don't like that messaging. So a lot of the traditional kind of CRM platforms, Salesforce, for example, HubSpot, they won't allow you to send SMS messages. If they'll even do business with you, Salesforce won't even do business with cannabis. So there's challenges there. So you've got these kind of startup companies that are, cannabis specific, cannabis focused. A lot of them are focused on one channel. They'll do SMS, they don't do email. They don't do email very well. And it's easy for some of these younger companies to dismiss email. Email is not for kids. Don't use email. That's for older people. You don't need to focus on email. And I look at my metrics; they're both critically important. There's a customer base that uses email that I've got to market to, and I can do things differently. And your response rates are different, your conversion rates are different, but they're still critically important. Social is important. Hopefully someday we'll be able to do paid social, which will make that even much more important. But as a kind of a brand communication consistency, that's critically important. We've talked about programmatic display. That's got opportunities for both acquisition and retention. So you need a pie chart that has all these different components in there, and if you get more bigger components, you don't have any dominant component, then you've got kind of a healthy marketing mix there. So the challenge is they behave differently in different locations. Google AdWords for us, for example, doesn't work as well in the urban high density locations as it does in the rural locations. So the percent is smaller there for specific locations. There's places where SMS just dominates, and others where it's less. It's a lower impact, smaller piece of that puzzle. So you want as many pieces as you can, and my philosophy is let's test and try everything. Let's find ways to set up tests where we can economically put something out there and see if it works. And if it does, we scale it. If it doesn't, we fail and drop it quickly before we spend too much money. But you gotta have your eyes open. Actually, I think it was you guys brought it to us. One of the things that I love about you guys bringing new ideas to the table. Who would have thought Bing would be showing a comeback? I mean, Bing was dead a couple of years ago, and all of a sudden, we actually found some pretty good return on ad spend and some good traffic coming from Bing. And interesting enough, it was a different customer. It wasn't the Google is the predominantly mobile customer, and we see that's another thing that people often overlook is the mobile dominance. 85% of those digital transactions are on phone devices. So a lot of us work on these big, beautiful monitors, sometimes multiple monitors, and we're looking at big websites and create these big campaigns. But the challenge is to focus on that phone, the small screen where customers are actually interacting with you and making sure you understand what that is. But Bing was interesting is that we were so focused on mobile, and then Bing audience is primarily desktop. Bing is a desktop browser that comes as a default browser with a lot of new computers. And I think Microsoft has done a good job of making it less obvious how to change your default browser, how to either switch back to Chrome. So you're seeing people that are using that Microsoft browser that has Bing as a default search engine. So things like that. You may have thought it was dead, may have thought email was dead, but let's give it a try. Let's see what happens. And it may become an important part of our mix. It may not, but if we set up our tests correctly, we're not going to get hung out to dry with a huge expense that didn't pay off at all.
Yeah, there's a lot more to your marketing mix than just billboards and weed maps, right? Like it's very extensive. There's a lot of channels that you can leverage, and there's a lot of differences you kind of went through them all as like the desktop versus mobile, and at least from my information, just as a whole for the entire country, you can expect upwards of 70% of all your traffic's coming from Google, and probably 70% in general of all traffic is going to be from be on mobile devices as well. And so you should really build your website mobile first, right? Make sure that people can find you, make sure you're discoverable, that they can get to the shopping cart with as minimal clicks as possible, and then they can check out as fast as possible, and then come to the store. Have that all in the checkout process where they can just click directions and just make everything as easy as possible, because eliminate as many roadblocks and challenges that users may experience, as they go through that whole process.
That's universal. That's not cannabis specifics. That's why I was alluding to earlier. What you said is, that stuff, whether you're selling dog food or cannabis or t-shirts, those things, making the user experience easy, making sure people know exactly how to do it. There aren't extra clicks involved. They get good communication, good directions, and so forth. That's universal. So you later that in cannabis, there's a lot of people miss a lot of those basics. That you get the basics in, and then you layer in the cannabis specific complexities, makes it just a different, unique business.
Yeah, we have a question from the audience from Mark. How are you tracking where your traffic is coming from?
We've used Google Analytics using UTM parameters. It's good to have a partner that really knows how to set up Google Analytics correctly, and going through that change from Universal Analytics to GA4 is critical now. And we were fortunately, MediaJel helped us get into that really early so that we have historical data now. That was the biggest challenge. Is we thought we were going to move to GA4 a year ago, and once we realized that it wasn't going to inherit the historical data from Universal Analytics, we couldn't really go right into it. I like to look at trends. I want to see my trends over time, and so starting from scratch was going to be a tough pill to swallow. So we were able to we set it up, let it run in the background, and gave us a year of data. But Google Analytics has been that primary tool for tracking, being that more than 80% is digital. That really works really well. It's much more difficult to tie an attribution from offline advertising, but based on the way cannabis in particular behaves in such a digital manner, it's actually very effective.
Yeah, and really take that serious, guys. Like Google Analytics is going to be a great, free tracking platform for you. And the traditional Google Analytics Universal Analytics will be sunset July 1st of next year. So I would recommend at least getting it set up in the next month so that you can have a year's worth of data that you can compare to. Really now is the time, right? Because you're not going to have the opportunity to use the traditional Universal Analytics. So I would take that serious, and then make sure you implement that. And we're happy to help. Feel free to message me or reach out to MediaJel, and we'll help you install the GA4 tracking and make sure that you are tracking a lot of metrics. And actually, let's talk about that, Mike. What metrics will investors want to see, and what analytics should a marketing professional be tracking?
Well, just so that the question that was posed, you want to understand where your traffic is coming from. So using those UTM parameters, the thing you need to cautious of, and the way I like to look at it is the default is last touch attribution, which you need to have, right? That's what you have immediately. But you need to look at the other attribution, assisted conversions and so forth. You can get really complicated and build really complex attribution models. I've done that in the past, and I've found that you can go down rabbit holes. You can make that very complex. But if you can at least take a look at last touch and then multi-touch, and then you get an understanding. Okay, where's my real kind of return is somewhere amongst those. And there's channels that are going to be definitely over-indexed on last touch that you need to understand. And if you can kind of reallocate that. The challenge is, what's the right time frame? I chose to do it monthly, and set kind of those targets. What's our target ROAS for Google Ads, for example? It's based on kind of that monthly average. And let's set the guys to be able to work on that on a daily basis using last touch, but knowing what the true impact is. So, understanding where your business coming from, what are the channels, the activities, marketing activities that are driving business. That's critically important. How that is trending over time, what's growing, what's changing, what's not changing. You want to know if something changes. There's been changes with SEO, right? Google will make changes that surprise people, and all of a sudden they've got smaller percentage of your traffic coming from SEO. You're looking at raw percentages, something else will jump up. Yeah. Not necessarily meaning that's doing well, but it's taking your pieces of your pie have shifted. So understand there's some exercise you have to do to really understand what's going on there. The other piece that's critical is understanding your acquisition retention metrics. Obviously to build a sustainable business, you've got to have a steady flow of new customers, and you've got to be retaining a good portion of those people who've purchased from you in the past. So those are dynamics that will change by location. They're different in adult use markets versus medical markets. So understanding what the acceptable values are is challenging in a lot of ways. But I mean, those are critical. I mean, if you can tell your investors, your board, hey, we're acquiring these customers, we're retaining at this rate, that builds us kind of with a growth trajectory. And if we need to change that, there's instances where your retention rate is low, and so your growth is going to be slower unless you invest more marketing in that acquisition. So and those are the key. We can get into a lot of things, but understanding the sources, how those are changing, understanding your acquisition retention metrics are really the top of mind key that should be leading any kind of review that you're going to do.
Yeah, know that cost per acquisition is key, and that's one of the main things that we track. Return on ad spend is another. Retention rate's huge, right? I mean, it costs a lot to get a new customer, so you want to make sure that they're coming back. And I just want to define the difference between last click and multi-click, because it's really important to distinguish the difference between the both of them. Last click means someone clicks on an ad and then purchases in that instance. Multi-click means they saw an ad or they clicked on an ad. They may have not purchased on that instance, but that was part of the conversion kind of journey, the customer journey. So, just want to make sure that we differentiate those two.
Absolutely. And in reality, customers interact with lots of different channels.
Yeah.
They may interact with a text message and an email. Various days. They may interact with a business listing if they're looking for directions. They may interact with a paid ad if you're at the top of the page. So it's very rarely linear one activity. So you're just kind of understanding what are those dynamics and making sure that you can assign attribution. You understand where you can make adjustments and shifts in those attribution is important.
Yeah, exactly. I'm going to answer this question from Jonathan here. Is programmatic advertising missing from Apple products that do not allow third-party cookies? So that's a great question. At least on the MediaJel front, we're actually not using cookies. The way that we're tying a transaction to an impression would be through an identity graph, meaning someone sees an ad and then we know that they have their device ID 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and we know that user went to the shopping cart and then purchased, and then we match that way. So there's cookies are going away, and Apple's done a great job about protecting people's privacy, especially across Facebook advertising. Like it's no news there that Facebook dropped billions of dollars in value just because Google, because of Apple's limiting the cookies, and same thing with Google. So Google's gonna be following suit there. So make sure that you really look at this before you look at the technology and how the conversions are being tracked before you really launch any marketing campaigns. Any insights you want to add there, Mike?
No, I think it's going to be another challenge, right? It's we've seen it the last couple of years. Google announced they're going to do it next year, so it's going to continue to be an issue. I've stopped getting nervous about when that cookie deadline is because it keeps getting kicked down the road. So there's things that you can control, things that you can't control. But again, it comes back to test and learn. Things will change, and need to accept that and find partners who have either new ways to connect with a customer or workarounds or something, and find a way to test it. Sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't, but you'd be surprised a lot of times at things that actually work really well, and things that you think are a sure bet. There's no way this can lose, just doesn't produce the results that you want. So just be open mind, try stuff, test stuff, lean on your partners to make sure that you've got economically acceptable tests. Time frames are huge. Some of these things you need to let run for a couple months to see how they play out. Others, if it's a big expense, you want to kind of limit that time frame so that you sooner rather than later if your advertising is generating a return. But being open-minded and flexible and willing to try things is vitally important. Again, when you're muted.
Sorry, advertising tactics are gonna. Some of the advertising tactics are gonna have just results right away. I mean, Google ads, Bing ads. Typically, you can start to see results in a week or two. SEO, and that's going to be 3 to 6 months. Programmatic advertising can take. You should give it a month to learn and optimize, and from months 2 to 3, you'll start to see more higher return on ad spend. And some of the directories those can take some time to really pick up some steam because you have to build up your reputation and reviews. And that's actually something we haven't talked about, like how, Mike, as far as the reputation and, retention, like how important are reviews in the entire strategy?
We think they're really important. It's so difficult to measure that one. That's one you kind of have to trust. Just as a user, that if you look up a store and it's got 2-star review, that's you're going to pause, right? If it's got 5-star review and there's 1,000 reviews, there's some reputation there that you can learn from or lean on. So we think it's important. It's hard to measure, what's the impact of 100 versus 1,000 and so forth. But at the end of the day, anything you can do to get your advocates, your diehards to give you a good review there is really helpful to your business. You see it in conversion rate, people more likely to click on that. You see it in Google, prioritizing sites and the business listings that have better reviews, have more reviews, have higher reviews. So it's important. There's lots of different, you got Google, you got Yelp, you've got all these places, Leafly, Weedmaps, where people can review you, and you want to be able to give your customers the ability to review at the channel that they are comfortable using. So important, hard to measure, but I believe it's very important to have that as part of your mix.
I know it definitely makes an impact on your local SEO results, especially your Google My Business listings. So, I always share with clients, it's like, hey, this doesn't cost you anything. All you need is either your bud tenders or some automation post visit through your SMS platform or email platform. And it's not going to cost you anything. It's going to make a massive impact with your customers and building that trust. And with Google, it's the authority as well. So it pays for itself majorly. Like, at least from my experience, like we had some clients in rural areas, and I told them, like, hey, the first milestone should be 100 reviews on Google, second milestone 300, and then after that, as far as you can get to 1,000. And whether it's a retail location or a delivery service, like those will immediately like jump you to the front. And there's some other factors that come into play with SEO, like the authority of your domain name and the way that your SEO, their website is optimized, and your schema and all these other factors. But reviews are going to support in a major way. And make sure you're at least at a 4.7 or higher. That's my recommendation. And at least get to that 300 reviews as a starting point.
And important here, I want to assume that people know this, but make sure they're genuine. Don't go out and buy reviews. Pay for reviews. I was in Las Vegas recently, and looking up dispensaries, and saw, good dispensaries had a couple hundred reviews. And then there was one that had, I think it was 13,000 reviews. It was just astronomically different. And so wait, we got to go check this out. What are they? They're doing something fabulous there. And we went to the dispensary. It was a run of the mill, if not below average dispensary. Nothing fancy. No. So once we dug in, we're like, okay, yeah, these reviews are not real. And one, customers will discover that eventually, and that's not a good reputation. And two, you get penalized. The last thing you want is for Google to identify, hey, this is not the business on the up and up. We're not going to show them at all. That's really going to hurt your business. So don't be kind of lured into some of those attractive offers to give you a bunch of additional reviews online.
Yeah, I mean, Google's more sophisticated than probably any of the other companies in the world. I mean, they know your IP address, they know how many reviews you're posting across different platforms. They know if you're an actual person or a bot. Like, it's pretty simple to distinguish the two, and you can tell when it's written genuinely versus versus just kind of spam. And don't pay people or incentivize people for reviews. That's a no-no. And I know that, you wear a lot of hats, Mike, and we've worked together for a long time, and we've always been like flexible with the marketing campaigns. Like, what key milestones, both positive and negative, should you be looking at, before triggering a major pivot in the overall marketing strategy?
Wow, that's a tough question. Just seeing the way stores behave differently based on location, and we talked about urban and rural. competition is so key. If you're in a market where it's you and two other competitors in a 20-mile range, you're going to do really well. If you're in an urban location where you've got 15 different dispensaries, it's challenging. So really understanding what's your market, understanding what's working, what's not working. I mean, we found instances where you got a dense urban market, not good accessibility, lots of competition. I realized it didn't matter how many text messages or emails we were going to send out or billboards we were going to buy. We needed to go compete on price. So we need to have better prices, better promotions than anybody else around. So I mean, that's a tactic that can drive revenue. You have to be in sync with your finance people there, understanding, okay, we're changing the margin structure, we're changing a lot of the metrics are going to change if we go that route. And let's make sure that we're on the same page and we're comfortable with what that change will mean. And maybe sometimes where it makes complete sense, there's other times where I say, you know what, this is all this location is going to do. Let's not spend too much on there. You could be in situations where you're in a medical market and it's going to be tough. But if it becomes adult use in any time in the next short time period, you should see a pop and those metrics will change. So let's be patient and wait for that to happen, and then reassess when it happens. So there's there could be different trigger points along the way. I think if you're really kind of on top of your metrics and you got this pie of multiple channels and you got these continuous tests, you can be constantly adjusting and improving, and not have to take that time out and completely reassess everything that's going on. That's really not a good situation to let yourself get into.
100%, and just make sure that you can make changes quick and that you're getting buy-in from everyone, right? And making sure that everyone's aware of the differences by location. Well, Mike, we only have a few more minutes left, and audience, if you have any more questions, send them my way before we wrap up here. But is there anything else that you'd like to share, Mike, before we part ways, and any other topics or strategies that you'd like to share with our audience?
I think we've covered a lot. Obviously, we've spent most of the time today talking about retail market and how do you drive people to a dispensary. When you put your other hat on, your product marketing, right? Most of us are vertically integrated, and we've got retail, but then we have products and brands that we're selling through our own dispensaries and through other dispensaries. There's a whole nother kind of thought process and way to go about. A lot of times you don't have the direct connection to revenue like we do on the retail side. So you got to think about things differently. And maybe it's probably a whole nother webinar or two or three to dig into. So just keep that in mind as well. You just be flexible, understand. That's a critical jump point. You need to understand, okay, are we talking about retail and direct response, or are we talking about brand and third-party distribution? That will change the way you think about a lot of these things. But again, when you back up the core of you're connecting with customers, you want to have all kinds of different ways to connect with customers. There's a lot of those fundamentals are the same as long as you've got the distinction between the actual execution points.
100%. And thank you again, Mike, for sharing all your insights. It's been a pleasure to work with you the last few years and really be on the forefront of anything marketing in cannabis. It's you definitely keep me on my toes and vice versa.
Yeah, I think we think alike in that there's lots of opportunities. There's I tell my team on a regular basis, there's more good ideas than any one of us, or even as a team, we can execute on any day, week, or month. So prioritizing those, figuring out which ones make sense, and continue that funnel of good ideas is vitally important. And I see that with a lot of things that you guys cover at MediaJel. We'll challenge you with new ideas, and then you'll challenge us with new ideas. So finding partners like that really helps grow a business.
Agreed, and it keeps it fun, right? It gets me excited to wake up in the morning and chat with you, and like, all right, here's where we're gonna find some more gold today.
We don't always find gold, sometimes it's cold, but as long as we understand that that's a risk, and we can adjust and keep going and try something different, that's what keeps us going.
Yeah, agreed. Well, thank you again, everyone, for logging in today. And I put Mike Bibbey's LinkedIn URL in the Zoom chat, so be sure to check him out and message him directly if you want to work with them or just run ideas by him. So just to recap as well, MediaJel here, we are focusing on driving that new customer acquisition, customer retention through programmatic display advertising, through SEO, and through paid search. So that's Google ads, Bing ads, and there's more coming down the line. So keep an eye out for everything that we're doing, and be sure to subscribe to our content, and we'll catch up with you next week. Take care.